Guys, I was thinking today that it's probably a good idea to back up a little bit and talk about the different macronutrients that we eat. We usually consume either carbohydrates, proteins, or fats. And I just assume that everyone knows what that is, but that does not mean that everyone does know what that is. I took a health class back in college that went over each of these macronutrients and explained what they were. And so I've had that knowledge from way back when, 20 years ago in college. However, it's not just common knowledge. So I thought, let me back up and just explain to you what is a carb, what is a protein, and what is a fat. If you already know that, you can totally just skip this video and not worry about it. But if you don't know what that is, I thought it was really important to clarify those things because some people get confused. So the first macronutrient I wanted to talk about was carbohydrates because that is the thing that is super important to be careful about when you're eating um, either a ketogenic diet, a low carb diet, or just a diet that you're being careful about the amount of carbohydrates that you're taking in. So your carbohydrates are going to be things like grains, breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, and all of those things can be placed in a healthy diet. They can be. However, when we struggle with insulin issues or diabetes or just any kind of endocrine type issue, those are things that we got to be real careful about. Carbohydrates, though, are not just your breads and your pastas and rice and potatoes. Those are one part of the carbohydrates. But you also need to consider that your vegetables and fruits are also carbohydrates. So, whereas most vegetables will be fine on a lower carb diet or a ketogenic diet, some of those vegetables will affect your blood sugar more. So, you need to be really careful and know what those different ones are. So, some of the vegetables that you want to be careful about, some of them we consider vegetables, but they're really grains, like corn. That is more a grain than it is a vegetable. But there are also other vegetables that are higher in carbohydrate and will turn straight to sugar in your body, like carrots, um, garlic, and onions. You have to be careful about those. Even peppers, you have to be kind of careful about those. So, those are some vegetables that we want to be careful about. Now, fruits, all of that, whether it's healthy or not, whether it has fiber or not, it will turn to sugar in your body. And there are certain fruits that are a little bit easier on the sugar content, such as raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, any kind of berry is a little bit lower in sugar content. So those are safer if you're trying to watch your sugar and trying to watch how much sugar intake you have. So those are good. Now, other fruits are good for you in to some extent. However, if you are having issues with insulin resistance or blood sugar issues or endocrine issues, these are the ones you're going to want to be really careful about not eating, such as apples, bananas, grapes, watermelon. So those higher sugar, oranges, those higher sugar fruits, while they are good, they're not necessarily always good for a body that's broken and needs some healing. So just be really careful about that. Now, also, another carbohydrate is your legumes. And again, while they do have a lot of fiber in them and they do break down a little bit slower in your body, they still turn to sugar. So you want to be careful about that. Right now, for the most part, I'm avoiding any legumes. So think about your kidney beans, your black beans, your butter beans, peas. So those kind of things, be real careful about. So look at look up on the internet or um, through a book or just whatever, the nutrition label. Look at the carbohydrate content And also look at the fiber content. Maybe the carbohydrate is, say, 5, and then your fiber is maybe 4. So that's really only about a gram of carbohydrate, and that's completely fine. You can have that kind of vegetable. But now, if your vegetable has 15 carbohydrates and only 2 fibers or 4 fibers, you're going to really need to look at that if you're trying to keep your carbohydrate intake down, which is what I'm trying to do on the way with the way I eat. So that is carbohydrates. I also want to talk about some other carbohydrates that I would think are a given of not to eat. However, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about them. So, just like I talked about the grains, some of your wheat and millet and um, corn and things like that, you're going to want to be real careful. That some of those are unprocessed, and so they have a little more fiber in them, and they're not as hard on your blood sugar. But you'd be surprised. I just avoid it all. Um, but then there's the others that I think are just a given. You know, your donuts, your refined carbohydrates, your cakes, your cookies, those kind of things do not belong in a ketogenic diet, in a low carb diet, or they really don't belong in any diet every day. Of course, you know, life happens, and there will be times where you're gonna possibly eat something like that, but it shouldn't be a part of your healthy living and healthy lifestyle. And then the other thing, obviously, you know, candy, junk food, Twizzlers, M&Ms, that kind of thing, straight sugar. It turns to straight sugar in your system, and you don't want those in there. So those are all the carbohydrates, and those are things that we have to be really careful about eating when we have insulin issues. And even if you don't necessarily have diagnosed insulin issues, they're just not good to have on an everyday basis. Okay, your protein, that macronutrients, pretty easy. It's going to be your cow meat, your hamburger meat, turkey meat, chicken, fish. So all of those kind of things. Pork, that's your protein. So that's pretty easy. And then your fats. I made another video that talked about different kinds of fats. But you're going to have saturated fats. You're going to have monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and then your trans fats. And the trans fats are what we want to stay away from. So look at the labels and make sure you're avoiding that. But the saturated fat, the monounsaturated, and the polyunsaturated are all good fats to have, and those are your good healthy ones. So refer to the other video that talks about healthy fats if you want to know more information about that.